Hey, what's going on, y'all? I'm back. I am finally off work. I have logged out for the weekend. I'm done. It's a wrap. I'm not looking at no more emails, not looking at no more tax returns. I am shutting that side of my brain off. Okay, so all my work right here, I'm going to put this stuff over on the floor. I got to clean my office today. I didn't want anything, you guys. I just want to jump on here. I want to get into reading these last two chapters of this book. Can we escape the simulation? We're on a good roll. So, we went through the entire book pretty quick. I got it like was it last week I got it? Last week or the week before last? I mean, this is the fastest I think I've ever gone through a book with you guys, to be honest with you. It's a short read. So just to recap, this book was put together by Claudio Nicelli, NOS, and he basically just cataloged his conversations and his journals or memoirs during the time that he, I guess, went beyond the ice walls to the ancestral republic, as well as having conversations, I'm assuming here in the known lands with Helen Morris, right? Or it could have been on the other side. I don't know. But Helen Morris is what we would call an extraterrestrial woman who's beyond or from beyond the dome. She's actually an ancestral human, all right? But because of where they are and where she was born, she's actually able to live a lot longer because of the technology and the environment there, right? So when they come in to our portal or come through our dome, our reality tunnel, I'm more than sure they have the technology to heal themselves, right? But oh gosh, my hair is all over my head. Sorry about that, y'all. I'm just having one of these days. So we've read pretty much the entire book. We just got 2 chapters left, so I'm going to just deep dive into this and we're going to wrap it up. Because the next book that I want to get into, along with Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids, is the Giants. The next book that he has on his reading list is the Anakin Giants, and how they live underground in the inner world, inner earth, as well as beyond the ice walls, right? Like I told you before in my last video when I was at lunch, we're being monitored every which way you can think of. And nobody really truly understands that more than me, because I know that not only do we have the corporations, the 3-letter alphabet agencies, what you would call black ops, they monitor stuff. Actually, the corporations like the CIA and the FBI monitor stuff. And then you've got the non-human entities that also monitor stuff here in the known lands, which would be underground or inner earth or beyond the ice walls. I'm sure with all the technology now, because they are so far ahead of us than what we are now, they've been listening and watching to us for years. And I just really came to the understanding just in the past couple of months, or about a year now. I've been knowing that. But I don't care. I don't care if they watch me. I don't have anything I need to hide. My whole point is that, when you start looking at all this stuff, it just makes you think, wow, like, what are we really dealing with here? It's fascinating to me. That's why I talk about it so much, because it's something that I know that I'm supposed to be doing. Like I said, I was always wanted to be an ambassador for us, sentient ones, right? And dealing with non-human entities or non-human extraterrestrial. I don't even like that word anymore, because I understand no matter what type of sentient being it is, whether it be a mantis, whether it be a big, huge, giant worm, or a crab, or different types of reptilians, the tall whites, the grays, the whatever. Okay, they're still sentient beings, and we all still share that same oneness with the Great Spirit. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So it's kind of like they don't see us like that. They see us as food. Some of the entities do, not all of them. It's it's sad, because when I think about all the stories that I've read and I've watched on different TV shows and on podcasts and stuff like that, they always have a negative connotation about the Giants, nothing positive. Especially the ones in Lugloff Cave, where supposedly they, sealed them in a cave and they burnt them and they smoked them out or whatever and they died. I kind of really don't even agree with that legend or story or myth, because I know based on what we're dealing with here in the Americas, how they lie and how they manipulate the information and they turn things around to benefit themselves, right? Were some of the giants cannibals and going rogue? Probably. But I don't think that all of them are like that. Just like I said, I don't think even with the reptilians, I don't think all of them are bad, you guys. I think some of them just want to be let the fuck alone. I'm sorry, my language. You know, I'm having me a cocktail. I'm sorry. I had a bad day. Well, let me not say bad day. I had a challenging day. So I put some cherries in the bottom of my drink. Like I'm simply saying, I don't think all of them necessarily are negative or evil, right? I think some of them really do want to be left alone. They walk among us. They live with us. They live among us. They, they work right next to us and we don't even know the half of it. Like, I'm serious. We don't. But, that's just the thing that we deal with and people don't even be the wiser. And it looks like my phone's going to die. So let me see if I can do this reading really quick and get through this chapter. We were going to get through chapter 15. The giants promised to return to our lands. Let me see how fast I can read this before we lose battery power on my phone. Yeah, because this is a long chapter. So let me just get into it. So it shows the hollow earth, what it looks like, right? And it says, the journey did not begin with a great revelation. It began with silence. A train with no known destination where looking out the window for too long was dangerous, where the water tasted different and where every gesture seemed rehearsed so as not to disturb the environment. We arrived at a town I will not name. We slept in an inn where time did not seem to pass. And then death knocked on our door. One of the men traveling with me was found lifeless. His face showed no suffering, only astonishment, as if he had seen something so real, so profound, that his body could not contain it. It was not a physical death. It was as if his vital energy had been drained from within. No blood, no sound, only complete absence. We kept adjusting the plan after this tragedy. We knew it was a warning and we might be the next to face it. The journey stretched through several cities until we finally reached the awaited descent. Through an impossible access point beneath the station that appears on no map, though the place is quite well known today, we walked for hours. The darkness wasn't total. There was a soft blue light that seemed to emanate from the stone itself. The walls spoke in drawings made of pure memory, ancient tongues, fathak and ruins. Other symbols, fragments that surely once adorned a very different kind of entrance. And in the midst of the depth, my guide said, now your true journey begins, sir. The descent continued for several more hours, but not through the official routes, according to my companion, but through older accesses meant to confuse in case we were being followed. The passage was dark, damp, and clearly absent from any known map. We walked for hours through a narrow, ancient tunnels carved from living stone. The most disturbing part was the absence of silence. So deep became deafening. Along with certain pressure I felt in my ears as we descended, we began to feel something changing within me. I began to feel something changing within me. My thoughts no longer connected as they used to. It was as if the signal from the surface world was slowly fading away and I couldn't understand. These tunnels were traveled through didn't appear to be the work of modern engineering. There was no trace of machines or raw signature of explosives. They looked as if they had been carved with a precision that defied all known techniques. The walls were completely smooth. These are Tartarian routes, my guide said with certainty. When I dared to ask him more, he explained that some of them remained clean, untouched by the custodians. Others weren't so lucky. They were infested with beings such as the Polemian worms, among others. As I mentioned earlier, along the way, I saw symbols engraved in the walls I couldn't decipher, filled with fractal structures impossible to reproduce by hand. They somehow conveyed a sense of a life that had once been different. We kept moving and entered immense chambers like the underground cathedrals. Some contained structures that seemed to float in the air without any visible anchoring, at least none I could perceive, suspended as if defying the very laws of physics. They were ancient devices, moving slowly with a faint energy like the remnants of the past, forever waiting to be found. Down there, time lost all meaning. What felt like a minute could become hours, and what seemed like a day lasted only seconds. Nothing worked. Watches stopped. The body began to change. In one of the many chambers, one well lit and cold to breathe, I saw beings moving back and forth, as if working in laboratories on something I could never understand. There were pre-reset humans, the ancestrals. Among them were the first giants I had longed to see, not mythical. They were real. Human giants, tall with long hair, marked features, rough skin, and strength that didn't need to be displayed. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Everything seemed synchronized down there, and silence was valued above all. We were warned about dangers in the deeper levels. There was talk of non-human movement. The guard also alerted us had burns on his face. He spoke of the planarian worms. I understood without needing an explanation. I had read about them in the hidden documents. Very strange creatures of uncertain origin, with soft bodies that emitted heat and a nauseating stench that was almost unbearable, capable of draining vital energy without leaving physical marks, according to my guide. Some say they were created in underground military bases. Others claim they are custodial hybrids. In one of the passages, something left me speechless. A tree, complete and colossal, raising in the center of a cavern so far removed from the sun. Underground, its roots pierced the rock. It seemed to illuminate everything around it as if it had its own light, not artificial. It was life that did not depend on the local known sun. Absolute evidence that truth blooms even in the deepest darkness, while everything we see on the surface appears to be staged, a grand set. We continued traveling through the tunnels until we reached a subterranean city that I could never have imagined, not even in my best or worst dreams. It was not a military base nor a makeshift settlement. It was a hidden core region deep within the earth. Improvised towers, hanging walkways, labyrinth tunnels, an endless web of paths connecting dome-shaped sectors. Many beings lived there, devoted to the great labor in the depths. Not all human. I saw beings I couldn't even identify. But as mentioned, our stay was brief. A messenger arrived with alarming news. Custodial movements had been detected. Trackers had been followed. Had we been followed? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing. We had to leave immediately. They led me through an even deeper tunnel. This time we traveled on foot without pause. I'd struggled to breathe, but every so often a gust of fresh air would come out of nowhere, as if some hidden ventilation system was still operating miles below the surface. The air was sharp and freezing. My knees hurt with every step. A stench of rotting metal warned us. My guide spoke a single word that made us stop. Polarians. He said, we didn't see them, but we knew they were there. We kept moving, not looking back. Those strange and disturbing noises echoed behind the tunnel walls. A side note, the deepest hole humans ever drilled is the Koala super deep borehole in Russia, which reached 12,262 meters or 40,230 feet. Besides several technological issues and high temperatures, unofficial reports claim that strange sounds, screams, and nauseating smells began to rise from within, prompting authorities to seal it forever. Did they uncover a planarian worm base? Maybe. After many hours, who knows how long, we emerged in a different kind of underground city, more advanced than the previous one. Everything was more sophisticated, and it was there that I saw him for the first time, a giant of the Anakin race. A towering being over 3 meters tall with a long reddish beard, a colossal body, and eyes that seemed to have traveled even more than my guide. He greeted me with a deep ancestral voice, not menacing, but rather kind, though hurried. Okay. And he says, he offered me a cold, transparent liquid and immediately began to speak about things I needed to know. Even in that short time, he showed me a map, which he called the map of Nashura, the underground tunnels and core regions that existed. But it was not paper nor digital. It was a kind of a hologram suspended before my eyes, floating in the air, a vertical map of tunnels, regions, energetic pathways, and connections to the surface. He told me we were in the nether, or the Sophia, the last active core region in that area. Below, he said, was what the ancients called Sheol, and even the famous dome also covered the endoterrestrial part. There was a marked region that served as a lower boundary, and no one could pass beyond it. He shared many intriguing things. Among them, he said they were planning their return to the surface in unison with the giants who lived beyond the ice walls. I wasn't sure it was real. It was a real plan or just a wish for revenge of the past, but my God assured me the plan was in motion and spoken with total certainty. Now, y'all heard when I say they planning on coming back. So I don't need y'all to be freaking out when they do. I'm just going to tell you. There's no way you should be freaking out. This is what this gentleman looked like. And he said he was over, 3 meters tall or something like that? All right, so then he says, he then led me to the lake they called the Lake of the End, a black, glossy, solid, infinite surface. There at the bottom limit of the dome, I understood that the barriers created a fully closed environment, both above and below. Under the dark lake, there seemed to be nothing more, yet its waves were strange, as if it was a great fountain or pool stirred from within. Without a doubt, it was a kind of a barrier. I was completely exhausted, partly from the lack of oxygen and partly from the long journey we made. We surfaced through a much shorter path, and with certainty rooted deeply in me, the reality we know is now the only one. There are other worlds and also a vast world beneath our feet. Other truths blossom in silence. Now I know it. And I also know that the giants have not left. On the contrary, they want to return. Bring it, baby. The ones that are the positive faction, right? All right. So this is the last part, and we're finished with this book. Let me read it because my phone is dying. Chapter 16, the ice walls and the final challenge. There were still many things that struggled to assimilate, but each of Helen's words seemed to illuminate areas on the path I was walking, areas that I had remained in the shadows. I will now share this last conversation. We remained silent. She stared at the infinite sky, which had become nothing more than a simulation of my reality since our first conversations. Only if they enter murmur dissolves. Only then will the system lose all its strength. Remember, the ice walls are merely an artificial physical barrier, even though that's precisely what they were built to be, to prevent reaching the dome or the dividing barrier. They also act as a vibrational frontier from which the murmur is controlled. As long as the mind remains trapped and submerged in the noise, the dome keeps its projection intact and everything vibrates in coordination to sustain the system aligned with their design. But if you reach inner silence, even just for moments, something in that projection begins to crack. The ice walls won't break and the noise will remain constant, but you'll perceive your surroundings in a way you never had before. And in realizing this, your inner perspective changes, and that inner barrier or border breaks. Physically, of course, it will still be there. So, Helen, are you saying it's possible to travel beyond? It's not just about physically traveling there. Many have reached, all right, y'all got to listen to this part. This is it. Many have reached the ice walls and seen nothing but ice and wind. Others have never come close physically, and yet they've developed a different kind of perception because the projection doesn't crack with steps on snow, but steps inward. Whoever arrives with their mental noise intact continues to only see the scenery presented to them. That's why many of the expeditions from ancient times in this new humanity have failed and ended poorly. There are still many bodies buried in the ice. And what's beyond? She lowered her gaze for a moment, then looked back into my eyes and said, there are vast lands, different skies, frequencies that don't exist here. But above all, there's a sensation of immensity and familiarity at the same time, as if upon crossing, you suddenly remembered that you've always belonged to those other worlds too. At least that's what happens to the humans of this cycle who have managed to cross the ice walls, very few of them. And why are we still trapped here then? Then crossing the dome would allow the whole truth to be understood without ever having found it here. It doesn't work that way. Crossing the dome has consequences, serious physical consequences. Yeah, it does. Unfortunately, your body must readapt to the change in the environments and time. Because remember, the great prison beyond the system, the parasitic colonizers have built and sustained, is founded on fear. Fear planted in each of us, fear of the unknown, fear of freedom. Crossing the dome like that could cost you your life without prior adaptation. So is it possible to escape? And it's the last part. At that moment, she placed her hand on my shoulder. To escape doesn't mean to flee. It means to remember who you are and to see what has always been there behind every illusion. The first step is not to bring down the dome, nor to cross the walls. The first step is to awaken from the noise transmitted from the ice walls and the first dome. Because when that happens, even if the dome continues functioning as a projector of the simulation, it ceases to be a prison. And if I manage to silence it, what will I find? She turned to me again, smiling. Hey, Jamil. And she said, you will find that you've only been inside the system temporarily and that nothing real can remain imprisoned forever. You will discover that the universe that they tell you about is false and that there is another reality beyond the simulation and that everything begins within you. And this is a picture that she has in the end of the book, or that Claudio has. So this is our son. This is the simulation. This is the ice walls. And so that's it. We finished the book. So again, this is Claudio Nicelli, NOS Confundrum. This is him taking a picture or a selfie when he was down in Antarctica when he wrote this book. Okay. When he went beyond the ice lands. All right. When he went beyond the ice walls. So we finished this book. And just to recap, I read to you the last two chapters. I read to you chapter 16, the ice walls and the final challenge. And then chapter 15, we talked about the giants, right? The Anakin giants and how he met one of the giants and the promises to return to our lands because they're underground and hollow earth. Here's a picture. Okay. It's one of many. And he said he was pretty tall, deep voice. He said that he was, how many meters did I tell you guys how tall he was? I don't know if he said 3 meters, 6 meters. I can't remember how tall he is, but he's hella tall. He is hella tall. And he showed him a map. He showed him different types of underground tunnels and core regions that existed in our world. But it wasn't on paper. It wasn't digital. It was more like a hologram, a 3D hologram suspended. And it floated right in front of him. So, they have the technology, I'm telling you. And then he talked about the deepest borehole that was drilled in Russia, how there was screaming and voices and things like that people heard, and they closed up the borehole because they thought they had reached hell. It's called Sheol, and it could be the Polarian worms. There's another race of beings that live here. I'm telling you, there's all different types of races here. I know some people think, oh, Carolyn, Nisi, this is fantastical. I'm trying to tell you, this stuff is real. It's just unbelievable that they've been hiding this stuff from us. I mean, like I said, Star Wars does a documentary. It wasn't sci-fi. It was like really how it is. And this is the Republic, but, whether or not we'll be able to break free, that's on each one of us. It starts within, the kingdom of heaven is within, and that's the part that they can't touch. And that's the part that we need to go to meet the creator, what you would call in the air, because it's within us. Right. So, we finished this book. When I come back again over the weekend, we're going to deep dive into the book on the giants, because I really want to see what they talked about, because he wrote another small book like this. So we finished this within a week and a half. This went pretty quick. It was only 16 chapters, right? So we still have more to discuss. So when I come back again, we're going to talk about the giants. I am going to do another reading over Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. We got to get into the prisons. I got some interesting facts I just want to share with you guys about prisons, and just some numbers and statistics that anybody can look up, but I just found it very interesting. And then, of course, we've got to pick back up on our ascension journey, and we've got to pick back up also on the reptilians, murder of reality, and flying serpents and dragons. Because as you know, along with some of the Anakin giants, right? Some of the let me not say Anakin giants, some of the Anunnaki, all right? The custodians, parasitic race, what have you, there are different factions of reptilians. And like I said, I truly don't feel, I'm not going to say believe, because a belief is like a knowledge and knowing. I truly don't feel that all the reptilians are out to get us or eat us or, cause destruction. Yeah, some of them are, but I think some of them just want to be left the hell alone. I'm just being honest with you. There are some races here that really could care two shits about what goes on with us. Then there are others who really have their boot on our necks. What did you say? Keep putting in this work. Yeah. Thank you, big bro. Yeah. I'm telling you, it's fascinating to me, and most people just they just don't get it. To me, when I went in the 70s, I think it was like 1976, 1977. So I was really young. I was like 7 or 8, right? We went. My cousin Beard, he was home from playing in the NBA, right? Because he played in the NBA, and he took us all to the movies. And I remember seeing Star Wars, and the way they recorded it, the way they made it was they made it backwards and they worked their way forward, right? So they made like episode, I don't know, 6 and 5 and then 4. And then they waited like 30 years and then they came up with the other 3 because they wanted to wait till the technology caught up with it. My point is, when I saw the movie, I looked at my brother and I told him, I said, this is real. I think I was like 7 or 8. He just looked at me, he said, it could be. And I was like, no, it really is real. And then I told Bill as we were walking out to the car, we were getting into the car, I was like, no, this is really real. This has really happened. And they were just like, okay, Niecy. Okay, baby. They were patting me on my head. My brother was pulling my hair as my hair was long. He was like, no, it's a fantasy. I'm like, no, it really happened. This is really real. And something in me right then stirred as I was like 7 or 8 years old. I've always known this shit. I mean, literally, it's like I've come full circle now. The only thing left for me to do is to interact with these beings. That's it. That's all. I mean, literally to interact with them, right? I'm fascinated by it. I think it's wonderful. It just gives a point of validity, and it holds true that this place, this universe, I don't even want to say universe, the universe inside you is just super massive. As above, so below. Microcosm, macrocosm. Everything is interconnected. And I just wish more people would see that, right? So again, I hope you guys have an amazing afternoon. I may come back on tonight or tomorrow for sure and read. We're going to start to dive into the giants because I really want to talk about them. And then I may bring in some interesting points about some of the Sasquatch, because Sasquatch are not cryptids. I just want to clarify that. There are some people in the community that continue to call Sasquatches cryptids. They're not. They're a whole different race. So when you think of Sasquatch, think of Chewbacca, the Wookiee, okay? That's what I'm going to tell you. They look like that. They come in different colors. Their face is, like ours. It's leathery looking. And, of course, they have a smell, right? Because they're different from us. They have a scent. And, people have been interacting with these Sasquatches for years. Like, I've listened to encounters and saw different things with people where, people would go out hunting in the woods on their property. And one particular, and I'll tell you this, and I'm gonna jump off here because my phone's dying. One guy went hunting. He went hunting for wild boar and hogs. Well, every time he went to go hunt on his property, right, he'd get on his ATV, get in his truck, back out his ATV, go out in his ATV, and he would go kill hogs. He would always bring back 2. One for himself, and he would leave 1 for the Sasquatch. Now, he did this for years. Okay. This was a common pattern for him because he knew those beings were out on his property in the woods. Right. So one day he got really lightheaded and he got sick and he passed out. All right. He just lost consciousness. And it was because of his diabetes. Right. I guess he didn't have his insulin or something. And he just passed completely out. The crazy thing is, the next thing he knew, he woke up in his truck, sitting in the driver's seat, and the door was shut. And his ATV was by his truck. So apparently Sasquatch brought his ass back, loaded the hog up on the back of his truck. I don't, from what I can recall, I can't remember if the ATV was there or not, but I don't know if he loaded the ATV, but I know the ATV was by his truck. So these beings set his ass inside his truck and he woke up. He woke up and he was like, how the hell did I get here? And he realized then where he was, and he was like, oh shit. So they not only took the hog that he had killed, they brought his ass back because they knew he was sick, and he put him in his truck. Now that's the type of shit I'm talking about. Another encounter that I read, is that a man had passed away. Him and his wife had been on his property for years. This is an older gentleman. He had been on his property for years, and his kids had came back to the property, right, for the funeral. And one of his sons went out, so many, feet out or acres or whatever to his treehouse, right? and they all saw these things, these entities coming down, these hairy creatures coming down out of the woods, and they took off running because they were scared. They didn't know what the hell was going on. So they got back to the house, and then they told, it was a house full of people because it was a funeral, it was a repast. And then the mother came up and she's like, "What's wrong?" And he was like, "Well, we seen these things in the woods, blah blah blah." So she looked out the window and she went out back. She said, "Oh yeah, they probably know he passed. They're coming down to pay their respects." And so what she would do, and this is just going to sound crazy, y'all. What she would do is she would bake. She was a baker, and in her kitchen, she had a window, and she would bake pies and things like that. She would always sit like 2 pies up on the window for the damn Sasquatch. I kid you not. And it was just a thing. It was like they knew that the Sasquatch would come down. They knew they were in the woods. They respected them, and they didn't go effing with them, but they will come down to their property and they will get the pies. I'm just telling you. So it's kind of like, it depends on what family of Sasquatch are close to you. Like if you're in the woods and you have property and you develop a rapport with these beings, they won't mess with you, and you won't, you don't mess with them, but you have an understanding. So that's just one of like 3 stories that I know. I mean, another couple, they had a garden, and they were, they put a fence around it. But before they put a fence around it, it was within their yard. It was fenced off, but they ended up putting more fencing around it because they were thinking that it was the birds coming in and things like that were getting them, and it wasn't. It was a Sasquatch that was jumping the fence, that was coming over and getting stuff from the root cellar and also from their garden. So what they ended up doing was they ended up planting additional stuff and leaving it out for the Sasquatch, so the Sasquatch would have it. I'm just saying, I know how that sounds, but there's been multiple accounts of people living way out in rural areas and having run-ins with these things. Some of them not so good, but I'm just giving you the positive stories. It seems like to me the Sasquatch are more along our lines than say the lichens and the cynocephali. The cynocephali are the dog people. Okay. You have run-ins with them. And I have not heard positive things, although some people have ran into them and they let them leave and they let them get away. But there's been times where they come up on your property and they will, do things. Sometimes they pass through because they're, they're roaming, like they travel certain types of the seasons. They'll come through certain areas and you'll know when they're there. Number one, the smell. The dogs, the animals start to act weird and stuff like that. You'll get key hints of when they're around. But for the most part, to me, the Sasquatch are more peaceable people. I'm pretty sure there's factions of them that don't like us, but for the most part, they don't mess with us. I mean, you know what I mean? At least that's been my understanding from just the encounters and the people that have come forth and said things about these beings. So they're not cryptids. Okay. They are not. They're not considered cryptids. They're just another, they're not human, but they are sentient beings, right? They are sentient beings. And so some of them can talk. Now, I've heard of encounters where they do speak simple sentences, as do the cynocephali, aka the dog people. They do talk as well. I do not know about the lichens. I heard from just encounters that I was listening to and books that I've read that they can speak telepathically and they can speak to you, but whether or not they actually do, I've followed Dark Waters over on YouTube, and he has a lot of encounters, and he's got great footage of these lichens and these dog people, the cynocephali. People have caught them on their Ring cameras, and they're not grainy. They are clear freaking videos that will make your mouth go, what the hell? So yeah, they exist. They're real. But, I always said, if me and my husband ever bought property and we were way out in the middle of the woods, I would take my chances on those damn cryptids and or Sasquatch than dealing with these damn humans nowadays. I'm just telling you. I would have a rapport with them. And my son Alex was like, "Mom, of course you would feed them." I'm like, yeah, because if anybody came up on my property and went up on my ass, Sasquatch's gonna come down and handle that shit. I'm just saying. But I would have to keep my chihuahuas in the house because they would come up missing, I'm sure. I would have all kind of cryptids in my yard, y'all. My grandkids like, Granny, is Sasquatch coming over today? I'm like, no, just sit on the back patio and shut up and watch. Anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing, amazing Friday. Thanks, Jamil, for joining me, and I'll talk to you guys soon. And tell Anita I said hi. I'll talk to you guys soon. Remember what I always say, be the change you want to see all around this Earth Dome, because it's up to you and I to make a positive change.